mpaka Ijumaa, moja kwa moja kutoka VOA Swahili, Washington.
Hello, Master Githui Yuot. It's Wednesday, December 7th. This is Africa 54.
Kenya's Dadaab refugee camp, swollen with Somali refugees, is suffering outbreaks of cholera and measles, as Juma Majanga reports from the scene. DRC and insurgent leaders met again in Nairobi on Tuesday. We'll detail those discussions. For kids who seem to have a hole in their pocket, a Kampala tech firm has created Kawu to track that cash, as VUA's Paul Ndiho tells us. All this and much more on today's Africa 54.
Aid groups say measles and cholera outbreaks at Kenya's congested Dadaab refugee camp have killed at least 5 people and sickened more than 400. Juma Majanga reports from Dadaab refugee camp in northeast Kenya.
Somali refugee Shamsa Aden is grateful her son Abdullahi is alive. But their story is one of survival and death. She was left disabled after being shot 9 times in 2003 by Al-Shabaab militants who in May this year killed her husband with a grenade. Somalia's record drought starved her 2-year-old daughter to death in October, so she fled to Kenya's Dadaab refugee camp. Then, a cholera and measles outbreak killed her 4-year-old daughter in November, and cholera sickened Abdullahi, who is still recovering.
It makes me have painful flashbacks. I feel bad about my husband being killed. I feel bad about the death of my children. I'm not able to talk about them.
Adan is one of more than 80,000 Somalis the UN says have fled to Kenya's overcrowded Dadaab camp since October to escape drought, only to face disease. In nearby Hagadera, the International Rescue Committee's health center alone has treated close to 300 cholera cases since the October outbreak.
Because of the short rains that we experienced recently and compounding with the current outbreak, the cases might really go high.
Most of the patients are children, like Somali refugee Ada Abdikadir's 3-year-old son.
I thought my child was going to die, but I thank God he is alive. He has been given medication to help him recover.
While VOA was filming at the health center, another patient, a middle-aged policeman attached to an aid agency, died from the waterborne disease. Compounding the cholera is an outbreak in the camp of measles, a childhood virus spread by sneezing and coughing. With thousands more Somali refugees expected to flee drought, aid groups say outbreaks of infectious diseases like cholera and measles could strain the camp's healthcare.
In a context where there is overcrowding in the space available, because if we are not allowed to do proper planning, proper site planning, decongest the camps, that means people are on top of each other and this can spread like wildfire. So that risk is there. And the only way to mitigate it is more attention.
Medics note children malnourished by drought-induced hunger are more vulnerable to disease. Meanwhile, Kenya's government and aid groups say they are mobilizing resources to try tackle the twin outbreaks. Juma Majanga for VOA News, Dadaab refugee camp, Kenya.
The third round of Congo peace talks facilitated by the East Africa community to disarm rebel groups in eastern Congo has concluded in Nairobi. Former Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta, facilitator of the EAC-led talks, says the significant progress has been made. Africa 54's Ndiho has more.
In a statement on Tuesday, Congo's M23 rebel group is ready to withdraw from occupied territory in the east of the country and will support regional peacemaking efforts despite not being represented in the talks. As the third inter-Congolese dialogue facilitated by the East African Regional Bloc to disarm rebel groups in eastern Congo comes to a close, former Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta, along with Serge Shibangu, the special representative for the Democratic Republic of Congo, announced conclusions reached.
I must say that we have made progress, and I'm hopeful that when we meet again in Goma, which is the place, and we have said that that should happen between January and February, we should be able to report progress on the items that have been agreed upon here, and then engage into some of the more medium-term and long-term agenda items that require time when we meet at our next meeting.
All parties signed agreements covering a range of critical issues, including a ceasefire, as well as allowing emergency humanitarian relief to reach the conflict-affected areas. The DRC's special envoy, Serge Shibangu, said he was confident the talks would produce fruitful results.
And we're happy that today we can see that we made a lot of progress, because we started somewhere, in Nairobi 1 in April, then we had Nairobi 2 where we engaged with armed groups and leaders of the civil society, and today you see most of them here. They maintain the ceasefire. They allowed humanitarian activities to happen in the regions under their control.
After being dormant for years, the M23 rebels took up arms again in late 2021, claiming that the DRC had failed to honor a pledge to integrate them into the army. The M23 have since won a string of victories against the Congolese military and captured swaths of territory, but according to Kenyatta, they had yet to meet the obligations agreed on in the Luanda process. Meanwhile, the current conflicts between the M23 rebel group and the DRC government forces have displaced hundreds of thousands of residents in the eastern part of the country, with the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs estimating nearly 700,000 people in need of humanitarian assistance. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
Even as the third round of peace talks in Congo concluded Monday, raising hope for peace, the Central African country is mourning the death of more than 270 civilians massacred by the M23 rebel group. In a pre-recorded interview with Jason Stearns, founder and chair of the Advisory Board of Congo Research Group, I began by asking him what it will take to stop the M23 rebel group from wreaking havoc in DRC.
The two options on the table are military. So the idea that a military offensive led by the Congolese government with support perhaps from regional countries could stop the M23. That doesn't seem likely at the moment. The Congolese government is pumping a lot of weapons and ammunition. They're engaging in sometimes dubious tactics by creating alliances with local militia. They're throwing a lot at this. And yet, despite all of that, there seems to be very little progress. Quite to the contrary, actually, the M23 has made many advances in recent months on the ground. So it doesn't seem that the military option is what's going to bring this to an end. On the other hand, if you look at the history of this region and at the previous armed groups, the predecessors to the M23, in 2013, the M23, there was another M23 uprising. In 2008, there was a predecessor to the M23, the CNDP. What brought an end to those insurrections? Well, every time it was foreign pressure, and in particular, it was pressure on the Rwandan government by the donors to the Rwandan government, since the Rwandan government, at least then, was found to be backing the M23. And so I think this time, the most likely scenario is that, at least initially, diplomatic pressure will be brought to bear on the Rwandan government, the M23, and that has the highest likelihood of bringing an end to this escalation.
But clearly, Jason, there's so many rebel groups operating in DRC. Why the scramble for Congo? And do you think the international community is paying enough attention to stop these atrocities?
Well, you're very right to highlight that there are 120 different armed groups in the eastern DRC. A lot of talk, obviously, about the M23, but the M23 is not the deadliest, by far, actually, not the deadliest armed group in the DRC. There are others that hold that title. And so the priority now is to bring an end to this particular escalation that's displaced over 200,000 people and really brought consumes all of the oxygen in the room when you're talking about the peace process, the demobilization process in the Congo. So that's the priority, but that's not the end game. I mean, even before the M23 arose, there were over 5 million people displaced in the Eastern Congo. And so I think that the important thing to realize is that there is a much broader question of peace and stability. Something wasn't working even before the M23 broke out. We didn't care about it then. There's a little bit of attention focused on that now, but there's a bigger, broader problem.
So Kenya's current president, William Ruto, and former Kenyan president, Uhuru Kenyatta, have called for cessation of these hostilities. And of course, the East Africa regional forces are on the ground in DRC. But do these mediation efforts go far enough? And what can be done to stop the atrocities that are still ongoing?
Well, I think it's great that the Kenyan government's involved. I think regional mediation is a very, very important factor in this. The Kenyan government has a lot of influence in the region, including over Uganda and Rwanda that have been spoilers in this conflict. And so I think the involvement per se, they also have a lot of business interests. Kenyans are getting increasingly involved in Congolese business, which is not necessarily a bad thing. So there's a lot of potential, and yet I think not much has come of it so far. Just today, the most recent peace talks in Nairobi were brought to an end, and there were basically no conclusions from this round of peace talks. And so I think there's been very little headway so far by this regional mediation. Now, in Luanda recently, there was a meeting of heads of states from the region where they concluded that if the M23 does not withdraw to the very edge of the DRC, to the positions that it held many months ago, then the East African force will basically wage war against the M23. And so I think the next step is to see whether they will carry out that promise, whether the East African intervention force will actually carry out offensive operations.
What's the impact of this chaos on civilians and DRC in general?
I mean, it's really heart-wrenching. There are 5.5 million people displaced in the DRC at the moment. That's the largest humanitarian crisis in the world outside of Ukraine and Syria. And yet we hear almost nothing about the DRC. The displacement in the DRC, when you hear displacement, it's a technical term, but what it means is that millions of people don't have a place to sleep. They don't have a reliable source of food or water or medical care. That's how people die. And that's traditionally how people have died in the DRC. It's not from machine guns or machetes. It's been through just petty displacement. And so it's had a terrible, terrible impact. It's also prevented the Congolese government from carrying out many of the reforms necessary. It's distracted attention. It's sucked up resources. And so it's a really tragic, and this is more displacement than has ever been in the DRC. We've been in conflict now in the DRC since at least 1996, and this is the highest level of displacement we've ever seen.
Jason, thank you so much for your insight into the crisis that is ongoing in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Thank you, Esther.
Jason Stearns is the founder and chair of the Advisory Board of Congo Research Group at New York University. A court in Mozambique has found a former president's son and 10 others guilty on charges related to a $2 billion hidden debt scandal that crushed the southern African country's economy. Armando Dambi Gebuza, son of former President Armando Gebuza, was sentenced to 12 years in prison for his role in the scandal, which saw hundreds of millions of dollars in government-backed loans disappear. Others who were convicted were jailed for between 10 and 12 years. 8 of the 19 people on trial on charges such as money laundering, bribery, and blackmail were acquitted. For more insight on this corruption case, I'm joined by VOA Portuguese reporter Amancio Vilanculos. Amancio, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you, Esther.
Well, these are famous people, by the way. And what does this sentence mean about, about the justice system in Mozambique?
Well, there are various ways to look at this. One of them is, for many years, the justice system in Mozambique was only looking for the petty crimes, looking for the small people committing some crimes, while the big shots were not taken to court, with some exceptions. We have to recall that this case only came to court after the IMF, the World Bank, and other donors blocked Mozambique from the international finance system. So Mozambican government was not getting money from the major international donors for at least 2 years. Therefore, the government was forced to bring these people to court.
So did they, in any way, because of their positions in the country, expect that the court would hand them such sentences?
I remember during the trial, Mr. Antonio Di Rosario, who is a former spy boss, mocking the judge. I remember Angela Young, the wife to one of the spies chief, also coming like very fancily dressed and trying to show that she was right to run such business. Which money comes from this stolen money, and also the son of President Gebuza, Ndabi Gebuza, also mocking the judge and also showing disrespect to the judge. So those are examples that these people did not believe they were in a real court. Only today, perhaps they understand they will have to face the sentence. So
are there others probably left out or whose cases are yet to be heard in this scandal?
According to what the court, the sentence, Ndabi Gebuza, who is getting 12 years, he is the son to President Gebuza. He played a great role to have his father approving the loans. But people in Mozambique did not see Gebuza facing the court. So people want Gebuza to face the court. The former Minister of Finance, Mr. Manuel Chang, is still in South Africa, awaiting his decision to be extradited to South Africa, to Mozambique, or to the US to face also the court. So these two people, Mozambique is still looking for these two people to be also put in court to face the justice. So, and also even Mr. President Nyusi, who at the time of this problem, he was Minister of Defense. People also want him to respond to
and
this.
Very quickly, Amancio, what are Mozambicans saying about this case?
They feel in a way happy because at least they understand that the justice system can work even for those big shots, but they still want these three people to face justice, which is unlikely to happen.
Amancio, thank you very much for your insight into this story.
Thank you, Esther.
Amancio Vilanculos is a VOA Portuguese service reporter. Still to come, our tech report, reshaping Africa's fast-growing electronic payments. But first, Haiti Adams tells us what's coming up on Straight Talk Africa.
On the next Straight Talk Africa, we'll look at how South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa, who came to power with a promise of good governance and an anti-corruption crackdown, got caught up in a corruption scandal himself. And ahead of Human Rights Day, we'll take stock of the state of human rights across the African continent and the rest of the world. Join me, Haiti Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa.
In other news, Ethiopia state-affiliated Fana Broadcasting says power services have been restored in Mekele, the capital of Ethiopia's northern Tigray region, for the first time in over a year. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the U.S. is expanding its current visa restriction policy to hold to account military or political actors who undermine or delay the democratic process in Sudan. South Africa on Wednesday released on parole Janusz Wallace, a far-right Polish immigrant who in 1993 shot and killed anti-apartheid hero Chris Hani. Hani was killed just as negotiations to end apartheid were entering their final phase. It's time for a technology report, and joining us now is our tech reporter Paul Ndiho. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Esther. Innovations, entrepreneurs and capital are reshaping Africa's fast-growing electronic payments landscape with solutions for consumers and students alike. Although cash is still king in Africa, a McKinsey survey suggests that its supremacy will likely be challenged in the coming years as payments gain momentum. A new digital payments platform called Kawu for students is generating a buzz in Uganda. I spoke to Stephen Kakoza, the founder and CEO of Kawu in Kampala, Uganda. So welcome to Africa 54.
People, it's a pleasure to be here.
You are a man on the verge of revolutionizing how students get paid or how students use their pocket money in Uganda. You've had some incredible success so far. Let's start there. What have you been able to do with the students?
There was this young man, me, in school. The only way that my parents could give me money was cash, because generally in Africa, they don't allow phones in schools. So receiving this money, I had to either use it within the first week of the term or somebody else would help me use it. So basically, within the first week, all this money was done. So I kept thinking and thinking to myself on how this could be, solved. But back then, I didn't have any way because I didn't have any technological knowledge on how to help this. It was after my university that I realized that actually something could be done. And then we designed the Kawu Smart Card. So we rolled out the Kawu Smart Card, and we've been quite able to attract a number of schools. We're now operating in more than 30 schools in Uganda, and we have over 5,000 students using the card. And in the past months, because we've been operational just for 6 months, and in the past 6 months we've been operational, we've powered more than 100,000 transactions. And this shows you the perception and how students are receiving this.
How safe is your platform? Because when I talk to a lot of people, especially people who deal with money, large volumes of money, the issue of security comes up. How secure is your platform?
We looked at security as our first priority in designing this card. This is how the card looks like. It comes packaged in this. And then this is how it looks like. So you get your card, and then this is how the card looks like. It's basically designed from scratch to be accessible and usable by everybody. So we have 4 layers of security. When you get your card, first of all, you activate it with your photo, you activate it with your full names, class, and school, and also you put a 5-digit PIN. So that 5-digit PIN is used to secure your access and authenticate while you use the card.
You talked about numbers. You said that you have had over 100,000 transactions this far. What do you make? What does it take you to process a transaction?
We wanted to make this as affordable as possible. And so we said, let's not charge the students, let them enjoy the service for free. So meaning if I have my 10,000 on my card, I will withdraw my 10,000 at no charge. But of course, we need something to keep this thing operational. So we charge the parents a sending fee of 3%. Meaning if you send 10,000, we'll charge you 300 shillings. And that 300 shillings is for us to operate and then keep this stuff.
How are parents receiving this? Because I remember back in the day, I used to fight with my parents all the time when it came to pocket money. They never wanted to give me enough pocket money. How are parents responding to that?
So I had it when I was still in school. I thought maybe the money they give me is not enough. They give me, but actually I was the problem because I used to eat a lot of this money like all at once. So there is this functionality we have in the application which enables the parent to, determine how much you should spend when. So meaning your parent can put for you 100,000 on your card, and then they will say you're going to use, say, 5,000 or 10,000 every week, and you cannot go over that. So meaning it gives the parent that ability to manage how much you spend in a given period of time. Parents somehow love it because they now have that ability to control, unlike with cash basis where you give somebody 100,000 and they will use it anyhow. This enables you to manage and track how much they're using, when they're using, and how they're using it.
I too believe in your idea. I think you are onto something great here, and I wish you the best of luck. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
That was Stephen Kakoza, founder and CEO of Kawu, a digital solutions platform for managing students' pocket money in Kampala, Uganda. And that's today's Tech Report. Back to you, Esther.
Thank you so much, Paul. Be sure to join Paul Ndiho every Wednesday for another Tech Report right here on Africa 54. The World Cup knockout phase in Qatar continues with the quarterfinals on Friday and Saturday. Morocco reached the quarterfinals for the first time with a 3-0 penalty shootout win over Spain and will face Portugal on Saturday. Spanish-born Ashraf Hakimi scored the decisive spot kick for Morocco following a 0-0 draw over 120 minutes. Morocco is playing in their sixth finals, having reached the last 16 once before in 1986. Moroccan fans are excited about their team moving to the next round.
So my name is Hamid, I'm from Morocco. We are so happy about the winning today against Spain. It's been a long time we didn't be in this stage, so we are so happy to be here, and we are so proud about our national team. And inshallah, we will be in the next round against Portugal. We are not afraid of everyone. We will play again. We will play hard. We will give all what we have. So we are so happy. Guys here are so happy. So all we need is to win the next round, the next game. That's all. Yeah.
Morocco is the only African team still in the running for the World Cup Championship. Go Morocco. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.